bit more on the Roland S770. So I'm going to, well, I've switched it on, and the operating system, which is on a SCSI flash card now, should load up pretty fast. And there it is. So this is the S770. Roland have three variations of this sampler. There's the S770, which is this one, the S750 and the S760. The major difference between the S770 and the S750 and 60 is the XLR inputs. I think it's got better quality inputs for sampling. But then again, in saying that, I can't say I've noticed any difference sampling into an S750, 60 or 70. I think the power in the S range is in the sound, the filters and the general sampling editing capabilities. The differences, just to go back into that, the S770 was shipped with, as Roland put it, a massive 40 megabyte hard drive. The S760, S750 didn't come with that, and they came later anyway. The S750 I think was released like 18 months after. The S770 can only have a maximum of 16 megabyte of RAM. The S760 can have up to 18 megabyte, and the S760 can have 32 megabyte. The S760 has the latest operating system. There is virtually no difference between the operating systems. But the S760 has some enhancements in how you load up sounds. You can tag sounds, so you can go through your library tagging sounds which don't instantly load. Then you hit, you've tagged them and then you hit the button to load them. Which is a very handy feature. The S750 and the S770 doesn't have that feature. The three samplers all have 24-note polyphony. You can have 64 performances, so this is a performance here, there's nothing in it yet. So you can have 64 of them. You can actually, it's when I use this machine live, that would be song 1, 2, 3 and so on. So it was very good for that, and you would have all sorts of patches in here. You just send a program change to your next song. So they all have 64 performances. You can have 128 patches. I'm just scrolling through the non-existent patches there at the moment. You can have, and there's 255 partials, and you can have a maximum of 512 samples and individual samples in the memory at one time. The S750, the S770 have the built-in 8 individual outs, including the stereo out. The S760 comes with 4 outputs, a stereo out and 2 individual outs, and then you needed to buy an extra DA box to get another 4, which is very rare now. I never see them coming up on eBay. If you're going to buy any of the S range, it is essential that you get the mouse and the monitor, and unless you enjoy torture, you need to get some kind of SCSI hard drive, whether it's a zip drive or an external hard drive or a SCSI flash card. Right, I'm just going to load up our performance just to show you how quick that is. And yeah, like I say, trying to use these samplers without the mouse and the monitor really is a bit of a waste of time. So you really have to get the monitor and the mouse. Right, so I'll just load this 49-second techie stuff. So because there was nothing else in the memory, it didn't ask if I wanted to clear the memory, but you'll see what happens the next performance I load up. You can save, you can load like performance, patch, you can partial, sample, so you can, you don't have to keep loading performances. You might just want a particular patch, but just for these purposes I'm loading up the performance. So because there's already stuff in the internal memory, it's asking, do I want to clear the memory? No. And you'll see the internal free go down. That's how much sample memory I have left. Bear in mind, there's only 16 megabyte of sample memory in the S770, 18 in the S750, and 32 in the S760. So that's the first performance I loaded up, and there's the second one. I could keep loading until I run out of memory. And just to make things really easy, instead of me having to do all this, you know, if I was like starting a new track or something, I'd just go into a new performance and start selecting sounds as I need them. And this is how I would use these samplers in any project, whether it's sound design I'm doing or writing a song. I'll just start loading sounds, fill up the memory, and I pretty much always find something I can use. And then let's say I've filled the memory and I ended up using these sounds in a particular track. I would then just go to name. I'm going to give that some random name. Just quickly demonstrate this. So basically you have to imagine I've filled up the memory, my tune's on the go. I'll just change these. So yeah, my tune's on the go, but I've run out of memory and I want to load up more sounds, but I'm only using like a few sounds in this performance for the track. So here's the song there. I would go index, disk, save. And here's the performance there, which is basically made up of the sounds from these two performances, right? So I'm just going to save that. Now, as expected, same name found, patch, it's found the same patch, partial samples, right? And because I do one, generally speaking, if it's not like a drum kit or something, or a multi-sampled bass sound or what have you, I just do one sound per patch. So this is how you see 6 samples, 6 partials, 6 patches. Do I want to overwrite them? I could do that. It'll just overwrite the samples and the patches which are already saved. But I don't, because I really just want to save the performance information. So I'm going to click no. So it skipped saving the patches and the partials, so it just saved the performance information. So if I go to disk load, and there it is there, I'm going to load that and I'm going to clear the memory. Because you see, remember, I'm working on a track and I wanted to clear the memory, so now I've got an internal 174, and there's that song. It's not a song, but you know what I'm saying, right? And now I can start loading more stuff. So this is a little process. This basically gets you around the low memory, well, compared to today's samplers, you know. So yeah, so I'll load this one, and I'm not clearing the internal memory. And I'll load this one. These raw hits are from a sample pack. It's a very big pack called Raw Cuts. There's a really big one. It's got like 30,000 samples. It's really quite amazing. Very useful, actually. Right, so on my latest song that I was working on, I had 8 sounds I was using, and I wanted more, so I loaded up some of that raw cut stuff, and there it is. And then I'd be able to start checking to see if any of these sounds work with the track. And again, if I fill up the memory looking for sounds, I could just keep repeating that process. If I find the sound I like, I could just save the performance. So very handy. So just quickly recap that. You can have up to 64 performances, and each performance can hold 32 patches. Except you won't be able to hold 64 performances with 32 patches, because you can only it can only hold 128. But a performance could just be a couple of patches. It could be a song, whatever. yeah, so, and 128 patches, 255 partials, which are these things, right? And 512 samples, which are these things. Now, a partial, might as well, while we're here, might as well talk about that. I'll go to a free one. You can have 4 samples in a partial. So I could have that one, that one, that one. Obviously that would sound terrible, those 4 together, but that could be 4 sounds that you want to layer, and you could do a little bit of fine tuning to get that big sound. I might be able to demonstrate some of this stuff, but you know what this stuff does, right? So, and obviously you can set these 4 different samples to play depending on velocity settings, you know, how hard or soft you strike the key. So this could be 4 variations of a snare drum, or 4 variations of a kick drum or hi-hat, whatever. Or a piano, so you strike it really harder, and then a different tone comes in. So this sampler can basically do all the kind of stuff that the multi-layering of samples, layering, I think they call it these days, and it can do all that, but you're going to be limited by the memory on this one. With the S760, you can get a bit, you can stretch things a bit further if you're doing all this sort of stuff. Now, to be honest, I've very rarely used any of this type of thing. Not because I'm averse to it or anything like that. I've just I never really got into the habit of layering up samples, and if I did, I would generally just do it from the play page and just have 2 patches playing. That's just me, right? But the partial page anyway, or all the settings to do with partials, you'll spend quite a bit of time in there. This is your attack, TVA. A is attack, decay, sustain and release. The TVF is your filters. And the SMT, I can't remember. I've never read the manual. I am not an expert in this. You do understand that, right? SMT, what does it mean? It doesn't matter. This is where you just set all that velocity stuff, right? Per sample. Common is where you'll set the output. You can the panning, tuning, fine tuning, partial level, and this page, the common page, it's on a per group status, if you know what I mean. So any settings you do here will affect the 4 partials if you've got 4 in there, or 2 or what have you. So just to show you layering up sounds in the partial page, so I've just loaded up some bass sounds there, and here's this is all bass sounds, 1 sound per patch. So I put that bass 1 sample there, and let's put another sample underneath. Let's do another one. And one more. Just going to give that a quick name. And I'll need to put that in a patch. Go to an empty patch, split, and I'm just going to span it across the entire keyboard. So I know it's the very end partial, the one with the 4 samples. And There it is. Go to the main page. There it is. I never actually gave the patch a name, and because all those samples already have filter attached to them, I'm going to set it up as you saw in the other video, the first one, where I can manipulate the filter with a pitch bend. No, actually, that was wrong. I forgot that creating a new partial, it obviously erases the filter information on the, even though it's the same sample, but it's a separate partial. So I actually have to put in the filter info. I'm just using low pass here. I usually spend a bit more time finding the sweet spot. Depends on the sound. I mean, I save these sounds with low pass, band pass, high pass, but you know, 50% of the time I end up changing it as I find a sound that fits in a track. You know, it's easy enough to go and change the filter settings to suit the track. Now that should work. Yeah. Now bear in mind, when you layer samples, because it's 24 note polyphonic, one note there is using 4 notes, and I think there's a MIDI monitor somewhere. Let's see if I can find that. There's a page somewhere that tells you how many notes you're using. Sorry about that, I can't find it right now. It's a page I very rarely... Oh, here it is. Must be in here. Yeah. Now you can really eat up the available notes very fast. As you can see, 4. But start like putting in some, you know, it's up to 8. A chord, 3-note chord. I've loaded up a bunch of sounds, and the purpose of that is just to go through them and talk a little bit about the S770 or the S range. I'm just making this up as I go along, right? So this is not an official how to operate the S range. There just happens to be nothing really on YouTube about this sampler, so this is to show people who might be interested in getting one. Right, so I've put a little bit of echo on the sound, because I never play anything out of the S7 or any instrument, not just that. I very rarely use stuff dry, and I'm not demonstrating the pristine quality of an analog synth here. So obviously a little chord sample. This is what I find interesting about this type of sampling. Like I say, 1 note across the keyboard, right? So if we start like, go really low, obviously because the sample slows down, the lower the pitch, the faster the pitch, the sample speeds up. And nowadays you get these samplers that time stretch in real time, so that when you go up and down the keyboard, the length of the sample is the same. And I'm sure that's very useful, very accurate and all that, and it's going to get better. But there's a certain charm with samples that speed up and slow down. I'm not talking about drum loops, this is single note stuff, whether it's a bass sound, a lead sound. And the samples start like really changing their character. So a sound like in one track that you maybe used away down here, you might have edited the release time so it didn't do the little rhythmic part, and then another track, it's the same sound but it's away up there. And this is what I like about samplers, not just the S range, but this is what I like about samplers in general. However, in saying that, I think there's something about this, how the Rolands treat their samples, the code or whatever it is, you know. I think there's something about it that sounds really good. When a sample speed up and pitch down. I like sounds that have an organic sense to them. Yeah, and as you'll hear, I haven't even attempted to loop this one. I've looped that one, and you can hear it's quite a dodgy loop, right? But again, that adds a little bit of charm and character, I think, depending on what type of musical phrase you play. And way up here, sounds like a high held string, doesn't it? That was probably why I sampled it. And down here, so you'd never really think that was the same sound, would you? And again, this is down to how the lower it is, the slower the sample cycles play. And I used to use sounds like this a lot in the records I used to make. And I have to point out, I would always EQ pretty much everything that came out of the sampler. Not because it really needed it, I just liked it. I liked mid-range. So I would always whack mid-range on the samples, and a lot of it. See, to me that's an interesting sound, because depending on where I play it, it really starts changing its character. Good stuff. Pretty much every one of these sounds that I've gone through I'd be able to use in a track somewhere. And yet I am quite partial, no pun intended, to chordy type samples. And that one even has a few little birdies in there. You know, the very first time I got this, well, it was actually the S750. That was the first major multi-timbral sampler I ever had. And I just sat there with it and I thought, there is literally nothing I can't do in terms of music now. This is how I saw samples, and I still do. They're like the ultimate chameleon guy or something, you know. You can pretty much be anything you want with a sampler. haven't edited the LFO. I never do actually, but that's its sort of standard setting. It's a bit too much, and it's I'm triggering that V after touch. I think that's a sample from a Prophet 1 that I have. Not sure though. Yeah, I think it is. I keep sampling those type of sounds, but I never use them. And all these samples, I just sampled them the last week. Just anything, you know? I think that's some bass drums or something there.